Hello and welcome into another edition of State of the Sun Devils alongside Jesse Morrison and Damon Allred. I'm Jeremy Schnell. We're going to get into the basketball in a little while, but obviously the 3-game losing streak for both women's and men's. Not great, guys, but for football,
not ideal.
Some good news. Kenny Dillingham, we got the details of his contract extension. It currently sits as running through the 2029 season. Can be more seasons, I think, if incentives are met, and hopefully those are met, guys. But
a year added for every 6-win season. So.
Pretty cool.
Yep.
Base salary up from $4.1 million to $5.8 million. Very well deserved after a incredible season for ASU football.
I think it's great because it really incentivizes winning. So the more he wins, the longer he's here, the more money he makes. So
the more money his assistants make.
The more money his assistants make.
But also not that he wasn't already incentivized to win here. It's his alma mater.
Yeah,
he loves it. He's very passionate. You can tell that.
It's frosting on the cake.
Yeah, the money helps.
Yeah, exactly.
I would say. Yeah,
it's added motivation.
Mm-hmm.
So that's my biggest takeaway.
The assistant money to $6 million for assistants, $2.8 million for support staff. That's big. Private jet usage in January and February for recruiting.
Huge.
That's humongous.
Yeah.
Plus a buyout is $4 million right now and gets lower each year. Pretty good number right now for where it's at. Obviously, maybe in the future you'd like a little bigger buyout numbers, but we'll see what that looks like in future contracts potentially if he's still sticking around beyond this one.
Yeah. It's really funny, this contract, just going through 2029, just considering that part of it. He'll only be 39 years old when it runs out, and then if it goes up to 10 years, he'll be 45. So he'll still be like a pretty young coach.
He'll still have most of his life ahead of him.
Yeah, he'll still be a pretty young coach by the time this deal expires. So if he wants to, he could do a lot of winning here and then retire young and have a great rest of his life. Hopefully, he continues coaching football at Arizona State, but this could set him up for an early retirement.
An early leap. We don't want this, but an early, if he really wanted to leap to the NFL, he might be able to toward the end of this contract.
I wouldn't say that I want him to be at ASU for a while, but if he wanted to go to the NFL after being at ASU for 20 years, I would be okay with that. I would be happy for him.
Yes.
But what's important is that he's stuck around through 2029. We don't have to worry about when he's 50 or whatever.
Yeah. A quick side note. The Suns haven't won in Atlanta since 2014 when Kenny Dillingham was 23 years old, starting his first season as an offensive assistant on the ASU staff. Isn't that crazy?
Is that good?
Yeah, that's pretty good. So he is now 34 years old and coaching one of the top 25 teams in all the nation, a team that just went to the college football playoff, and the Suns haven't won in Atlanta since he was 23 years old starting off.
And you wanted to talk about the quarterback commit here. It's big that Kenny has his next in line behind Sam Leavitt, Jake Fetty,
yes,
who on 3 Sports has is the number 55 overall prospect in 2026, number 5 quarterback. So those are big-time rankings for a guy who's been committed to ASU since September, well before any of this run happened.
Yeah, and he called it a big-time thing.
To be committed to ASU right now, yeah.
I am a little bit worried, though, because he continues to post on his social media about SEC offers. So,
right, but as he's posting that, he's also telling on 3, I love being committed to ASU. It's a big-time thing.
He loves being committed to ASU. That doesn't say he's excited to come to ASU. So
could he be
a little bit worried about that?
Could he be at ASU in a couple of years? Sure. But right now, we're worried about the guys that are coming in to ASU, and that's
Definitely
where it takes us to
decision.
the 3 offensive line, 3 linemen, 2 cornerbacks, 1 wide receiver. Let's talk about it. Oregon defensive lineman Gardner coming in to ASU, and then you got these 2 guys. I think this is really big here because ASU, they struggled with some offensive line play toward the end of the season. Sam Leavitt had to do a lot of work with his legs. So bringing in a guy like a Texas State transfer in Abajo, did I say that right?
I think a big boo.
A big boo?
Jameto, a big boo.
A big boo. And a Nebraska offensive tackle, Xander Ooh, here we go.
Ruggeroli.
Okay, I tried.
And yeah, the Oregon defensive lineman Michael Gardner as well.
But yeah, bring in the big guys to help out up front, whether it be offensive line, defensive line. ASU needs that. Listen, the defensive line has a lot of guys coming back next season, so just adding to that depth will be good. But for the offensive line, I think it's going to be big to continue, even with these guys, continue to bring in more depth just in case there are guys, number one, not performing up to the standard that ASU wants them to perform. And number two, we saw it 2 years ago with a bunch of injuries that happened on the offensive line. You can never have enough offensive linemen, Jesse.
Yeah, and they need offensive linemen. Their offensive line, I thought, was perfectly fine, good for the Big 12. But once they start playing Big 10 SEC opponents, in potential playoff games, bowl games, then that's when they need to have a stronger offensive line than they have, and and added depth is great in that area.
Yeah, let's get into Abigbu a little bit. 6'4", 340. That is a mountain of a man. He has a twin brother who's 6'5", 357. So really huge genes there. He graduated from Mansfield Timberview in Arlington, class of 2021, right next to ASU starting left tackle Joshua Atkins. And so there's potential for those two to be reunited back on the line. They're both entering their final seasons, so it'll be a cool last hurrah for those guys. He was starting right tackle at Texas State in 2023 when they went 8-5, starting tackle at Incarnate Word in 2022 when they went 12-2. So he's got a lot of experience as...
Is that the Cam Ward team?
Yeah, I think so. So they've got a lot of experience. Obviously, at right tackle, ASU already has a starter at Maxwell Ionichor. There's potential that some things could slide around. Obviously, 4 linemen coming back from last year's starting group.
Which is good.
Very good.
And you like the continuity. And it kind of goes to my next point is you like guys wanting to come in here and play with a quarterback who may or may not be in the Heisman conversation. It should be in the Heisman conversation.
Will at least be on preseason watch lists.
In my opinion, was the best quarterback in the college football playoff.
I think that's very fair.
So you got guys like that want to come and play in front of Sam Levitt, but also play on the outside catching passes from Sam Levitt, which leads to Jaron Hamilton, who is transferring from Alabama. Didn't play a whole lot this season. He got in on special teams, made a nice tackle, I heard. But this is a guy who has blazing speed, and another guy that is going to come in and contribute, you would hope, right away, whether it be slot or outside receiver.
You don't go to Alabama if you're a scrub. So I'm guessing that he has some talent in there. Obviously didn't really get on the field very much. Don't believe he had a reception at all. So he's kind of an unknown guy. But, again, he did have some talent somewhere that he was able to go to Alabama. So to even be getting transfers from Alabama now is really cool.
What do you mean? The Tyson quarterback that came
Paul Tyson?
Paul Tyson.
Okay.
Blake Barnett?
Yeah.
How quickly we forget Blake Barnett.
That is true. That is true. But I will say it's better. All of these transfers, for the most part, are coming from bigger schools.
Whether it be big time programs or it could be big time JUCOs, big time recruits like the Purdue corners who we're going to talk about, who started off somewhere, went to Purdue, and then played on a pretty good, solid cornerback room at Purdue. Unfortunately, that team was terrible this year, but those 2 corners, who we'll talk about in a second, are coming in. But yeah, to your point, Jesse, they're getting talented guys from big time programs.
Yeah, and a few years ago, they were getting guys that were at Division IIs and schools like that. So
and getting lucky with guys from those.
Yeah. Shout out Emmett Boley.
Shamari Simmons came from a JUCO too.
Yeah, I feel like Emmett Boley especially. He really had a good year for a guy that started at a D2 college. So, but again, you want to get guys that are from the Big Ten and the SEC. the ACC, the big power conferences.
And Hamilton has some good size too, 6'1", 195. He's got 3 years of eligibility left, so it could be like a longer-term development piece. He was, like we've mentioned, the talent there. He was a top 250 overall recruit in the 2023 class, so not bad there.
So that does lead me to Kendrick Breedlove and Nyland Green. Kendrick Breedlove, he is probably going to slot in at the slot corner position. 3 interceptions for him this year at Purdue. 4 interceptions as a team for Purdue this season. So
Most of it Breedlove.
So he had 3 of the 4 interceptions, 28 tackles as well this season.
336 of his 605 defensive snaps came at nickel. And he had, in addition to those 3 interceptions, 40 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 4 passes defensed in 2024. So a very productive guy. 5'11", 185 pounds, last year of eligibility. This makes sense as like the perfect Shamari Simmons replacement in my mind.
In terms of what you were saying before, Jesse, I want to kind of go back to that. When we're thinking about getting guys from programs that are established and guys that are coming from those programs, some of these guys, not Green and Breedlove, but some of these guys are coming from programs where they didn't get a chance to play. I think if they get the guys that have played at these programs and they decide, you know what, this might not be the right place for me, Arizona State is the right place for me. Guys that have had production at big schools, I think that's the next step in the evolution of the transfer portal for Arizona State.
I agree. I think that not saying that they're going to go poach guys. I don't think that Kenny is about that. But there might be guys out there that see Arizona State and are like, I don't really like what I'm doing here. I'm going to see if they're interested in having me. And some guy that has had 38, 48 catches, as a receiver, or somebody that's like this guy for Purdue who's had 3 interceptions in a season. Like, Purdue wasn't very good, but he was good. And so, somebody that might be on one of these programs that have some history but are kind of down, and they do well, and then they can come to ASU to join a better program as a better team, not just a room that's good.
Makes me think back to last year when a lot of the transfer portal additions, like the ones that come to mind right now, Keyshawn Elliott, Miles Rouser, Cyrus Fiaseu, from like places like New Mexico State and San Diego State, and like they produced there, which was awesome, and obviously that production translated this year. But to take it from, instead of like Mountain West schools that you're pulling good production out of, and suddenly it's a Big Ten, and obviously a lower end Big Ten school, but pulling really productive players out of Big Ten schools, it just feels like the next step. And like you mentioned, the next step after that is getting from the top dogs of the top teams, Yeah,
and when you get the guys from, the Big Ten, the SEC, the ACC, other Big 12 schools, they're going to have size that the guys that at these smaller schools usually don't have. So ASU is going to get bigger, faster, stronger, things that they need to do to, not have to come back on Texas in the fourth quarter and, play wild games like that, to be in the game right away because they can match up evenly with a school like Texas.
And would like to mention Nyland Green was a former 5-star prospect.
Correct.
When he enrolled at Georgia. Yeah. And only 88 snaps across 2 seasons there. They were both of those title-winning seasons. He actually played like 12 snaps in the championship game in 2022.
Love it.
So he's got a little bit of that championship pedigree. And then really for Purdue...
Purdue doesn't have that championship pedigree?
Okay, I would like to say something. Purdue had a down year, but...
They were awful this year, Jesse.
Yeah, I agree. I know, but Purdue has had some seasons where they've been a pretty good team. I think that
Jesse, ASU hadn't lost less than 4 games since like World War II. Purdue just won 1 game, or hadn't won 4 games.
I'm talking about
just
in
4
previous seasons before last year. Purdue has,
they've been okay, yeah.
Been a team they've
been respectable,
upset Ohio State and stuff like that.
But yeah, so Nyland last season, all of his or most of his snaps came in the last 8 games of the season. And in those 8 games, he really stuffed the stat sheet. I think 23 tackles, 2 tackles for loss, 2 sacks, 5 passes defense, and a forced fumble, all in 8 games. So I think that he's kind of coming into his own there. We'll see if he can push Keith Abney or Javen Robinson in either of those outside corner spots in the starting lineup. But yeah, to be adding talent who has been to Georgia and played in championship games, I think that helps. And
playing in against big opponents, like you said, Jesse, that 6 of their 12 opponents this year were ranked opponents. So that's a big deal as well. All right, over to basketball. Not the results that both men's and women's basketball will have wanted of late. Both teams on 3-game losing streaks. We'll start with the men's team. 10-6 overall, 1-4 in the Big 12. Obviously, you can put an asterisk next to that because they've been missing one of their best, if not the best player on their team in Josan Sanin. He's been sorely missed. Obviously, he played against Baylor or tried to go against Baylor, and he was in and out of the lineup a little bit, played toward the end of overtime. Damon, you were there for both games. What did you see?
Saw an ASU team that just can't string together 40 minutes of good basketball. No matter what they do, it feels like they can't get over that hump. I mean, was pretty good for most of the game offensively against Baylor, but was pretty silent in overtime. I think the only bucket came with like 10 seconds left. They were 8 for 14 from the free throw line in the second half, which that's pretty much the game right there, if you want to put it that way. Including Alston Mason missing 2 off of a technical felt big. And really, Baylor had the right guys to make the right plays when it counted, and ASU didn't.
Yeah, Jesse, it's kind of what we've been saying for a long time about ASU's offense. There's just some stretches that we see, whether it's this year or years past, some stretches where they just don't score points.
I feel like such a broken record talking about ASU men's basketball because I just make the same points every single time, and those points are their offense is too stagnant. Bobby Hurley cares way too much what's going on with the officiating and not coaching his team, which bothers me, especially, toward the end of games at times. In crucial moments, it's the team's in a huddle and Bobby's talking to the officials, and it's just at some point just give up on that because you're not going to change their mind. They're not going to reverse the call. I know you're trying, I know coaches are trying to get that next call, but at some point it's just go to the huddle and get your guys ready, get your guys in order to, make the next correct play. And then it's just the offense. Again, it's stagnant. They just stand there. This is something that Damon and I were talking about at the Baylor game. There's no off-ball movement with this offense. It's just
and when there is
stand.
And when there is and there's no open shot and they get to the end of the play is isolation. That's it. Go at your defender. If you cannot find an open shot in the set that you're running, it's go at your defender and create a shot, which is a lot of what it is in the NBA, but that does not work in college basketball.
Especially when Josan Sanin is out.
Correct. They don't have a lot of shot creators. Hey, man, Adam Miller is great at creating his own shot. I'd like to see him do it a little bit more.
Alston Mason, good when he's driving. Not so much when he's trying to do step backs and stuff. But when he's driving, he really gets offense going, I feel like.
I just don't understand, I don't know how much basketball you guys played growing up, but at a lower level, I would have been sat on the bench for not moving without the ball.
Yeah.
And that's their actual set is to have guys not move without the ball. And it just doesn't make any sense to me.
Sometimes if you're playing against a zone defense, that's kind of how it works where, drive and kick. But if you're not playing against a zone defense, drive and kick does not always work.
Yeah, but there's things that you can do against a zone defense, where somebody comes down and sets a screen on the guy on the lower block. And then the shooter in the corner runs past that screen and might get an open three in a corner.
Floppy.
And it's just like those things don't do any of that with this.
No, there's
ASU
no pin downs. They don't run pin downs.
They don't run pin downs. Yeah, it just
and
it
not
bothers
just,
me.
It's not just the off ball actions. It's whether multiple actions are happening at the same time when a team has to pay attention to multiple things as opposed to just one. And to me, when you're just letting one thing happen on the court and nothing else. It's letting the defense key in on that one action very, very specifically. And I do not get the approach there. And then you go to the UCF game, and it was another game where they had a lot of good offense, but down the stretch, not so much. And, Keyshawn Hall.
He was great. Fantastic.
It's just a total tip your hat kind of game. 29 points in the first
it's
half.
not like they didn't play good defense.
They did not.
No.
He was just hitting ridiculous
No.
shots.
Yeah, they played fine on the defensive end, I would say. And it kind of takes me to the point of Jaden Quaintance. He was great.
He was awesome.
He's been
When
great.
he took the Hall matchup, it was incredible.
He's been great for the last, I don't know how many games.
And that's good to see because he's growing. Now, if the rest of the team can grow around him, maybe you start to give him the ball and say, create a little bit more.
This is a good point because what did we see toward the end of that first half?
The spin move.
And how every single possession, when they got down on offense, it was, let's get Quaintance the ball first and then develop the offense out of that.
It's very like kindergarten in a way where you're like, get the ball to your best player.
It is.
But if it works, then do it, right?
When you do the minimum thing that is required, it makes a load of a difference compared to when you're not. And when ASU is just not going out of its way to get its best players the ball, and shout out BJ Freeman too as well. He's stepped up big
He's been
time
great
while
too.
Sandin has been out. He's set season highs in 3 of the last 4 games. I mean, he's been incredible defensively as well. He's shown like a real fieriness to him. And so I've really appreciated that out of him, especially given how he started the season. But, it's going to take everyone. When you're only able to play 6 or 7 guys, it can't just be 2 or 3 guys who show up and show out. It's got to be the whole 6 or 7.
Yeah.
They need to start winning games because
that would help, yeah.
They're
That's the goal.
They're losing games that they should not be losing because the schedule's going to get a lot harder. And right now, they're well out of the tournament.
Joe Lunardi said next 4 out.
That's crazy.
It is crazy.
I don't understand
also
that.
disagreed with Joe Lunardi's assessment, but he said it nonetheless.
Yeah, that's crazy. Joey Brackett, sometimes I disagree with that.
Listen, Jesse, here's...
But now they're going to be having to play catch up against teams like Iowa State.
But like you said, winnable games. You look at Baylor coming into the season, you're like, maybe that one's going to be tough. But they were in that game. And Baylor's a good basketball team, I will say.
But Baylor's not that much better than them.
Correct.
Or better than them at all.
In terms of talent, no.
Baylor had 19 points against U of A in the first half.
VJ Edgecombe looked much better than Quaintance or Sandin did in that game, I will say.
I disagree. I disagree. Well, Sandin, because Sandin didn't play at that much, but Quaintance looked very good in the Baylor game.
I thought Edgecombe looked special, so there's definitely a little bit of a talent gap in some areas too.
Yeah, in terms of his creation, but I mean, he turned over the ball 3 times. He only had 15 points. I say only, that's the second leading scorer, but I mean, BJ Freeman was great in that game with the 22. Obviously, with him fouling out in overtime didn't really help.
But if Edgecombe is like their 4th or 5th most productive player, like all things told, the gap was there. And then as we get into Saturday's game, ASU at Cincinnati, Cincinnati is the team 1 spot ahead of ASU in that Lunardi bracketology. So it would be huge if they can pick that one
Something
up.
about quads.
On the road.
Yeah, there's quads coming up.
Get ready to learn quads.
Any update on Josan Sandin from what you've seen?
Not most recently. The last we've heard was Bobby Hurley called him a, quote, pain in the ass, unquote, for the level of competitor that he is, just begging to get in these games. And, he said that he would look at things... I actually thought this was funny. He said some players that he's had in the past, they would stub a toe and be out for a month.
I wonder who he's talking about.
I don't know.
I think I might have an idea, but Josan Sandin...
Does his brother play in the NBA?
Oh, geez, Jesse.
You're giving a little clue there.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
But so he might be good to go for Saturday. Bobby said that Friday they would look at how he looked in practice and see if that athleticism is there, and if not, maybe hold him out a little longer. But some good news otherwise in ASU as well. Picked up a couple 2025 commits since we last recorded. 7'1" Leo Curtis from Iceland and 6'8" Cash Polk from, I believe, somewhere in the plains. I cannot recall.
Did you know they were making 7-footers in Iceland, guys?
I did.
I didn't realize that. I did realize that basketball was a big deal, and
Tall people in Europe.
I did think that
Iceland.
Iceland is Europe.
I know, but that just doesn't. It doesn't. I don't think. I don't think
they play professional basketball there. Remy Martin played in Iceland.
But anyway, very interesting things about Leo because he is very fluid for a 7'1" guy, much more so than Sean Phillips, at least. We've mentioned him before.
he's been great defensively.
Defensively, he's been much better than
what
offensively.
I've seen from Sean Phillips. He's gotten some good dunks too.
Yeah.
But Curtis also has a bit of a 3-point shot. He's talked about looking forward to playing next to Jaden Quaintance, ideally if Quaintance sticks around for his sophomore year. I think Curtis would be a much better fit as a 5 next to Quaintance than Phillips is just because of that perimeter threat and more of the fluidity. I think it allows Quaintance to be more of like the roamer and stuff. Trevor Best also has been warming up in pregame. He's ASU's midseason acquisition. He's a 6'1" combo guard who played next to Quaintance in high school. And Bobby said he almost put him in during overtime against Baylor just to try and get a steal. But I think odds are we won't see a ton of Best this season. But good to have the 2025 class
we
running
know
in shape.
If he does come in, he'll give it his best.
Yeah, he'll give it his best.
on.
And we might get the best 2025 recruit still, with Koa Pete still waiting to make his decision. It sounds like that will come after the high school season is over.
I have one more comment that I would like to make about the men's basketball team, and it's a positive comment about Bobby Hurley that I would like to say. I do appreciate him admitting to me on Saturday that he was making excuses. That was transparent, and I
Excuses about what? Explain the travel thing.
I'm getting there. So he was saying that the travel schedule he thought really bothered them in the first half against Baylor. And then, I asked him.
Well, because they got into Kansas late then left Kansas late. That's why.
Yeah,
he was referring to that.
exactly. So, and then, and I said, with the new extended travel, I guess, in the Big 12, what do you need to do to, help the players be better prepared physically or something like that? That's what I asked him. He was just like, well, I was just kind of searching for something.
He said it was BS.
Yeah, and he said it was BS and that, it's just making excuses. And so I was pleasantly, not pleasantly surprised, but just, happy that he was just kind of admitted that he was accountable. He was accountable with me, which was cool. So shout out to Bobby for being accountable.
Let's get to women's basketball real quick. Obviously, they started, very surprisingly in the Big 12 2-0, right? And now since they're 0-4,
Well, 2-1 because of that Utah loss very early.
Yes, correct. Before the
they started 2-1.
They started 2-1, so now they've lost 3 in a row. Not what they would have liked to see. Obviously, they kept it close against Iowa State. Iowa State pulled away at the end. Baylor game got crushed. Kansas game was not competitive. Jesse, you want to start with the Fauntleroy kind of mix up?
The biggest takeaway from the past week or two of the women's basketball team has been that they got in a fight, Kennedy Fauntleroy got in a fight with Little Paige Bugs of Baylor, and that
4 total players were ejected.
Yeah, 4
including
total.
3 Sun Devils.
Yeah, 3 Sun Devils, 2 for coming off the bench. That's probably the most interesting thing that's happened. Coach Adair said it was a good learning moment for the team. I think that they shouldn't be getting in fights. I think that's
Especially when they're in games. They were in the game at the time.
Jesse's been total Captain Obvious today on this podcast.
I have been.
You got to win games. Yeah, we know that.
You have to not get in fights.
Yeah, I think that not getting in fights is a good idea for ASU.
We'll get to hockey in a second.
It felt
That's a good point.
It felt to me like that kind of killed their energy for the rest of that game.
Because she was the only one that had it going.
Yeah,
too.
and she had it going. I feel like, and I saw this, I wasn't able to fully focus on the Kansas game, but I feel like a lot of their offense is just Ty, do something, and they need to figure out as again, you mentioned in college basketball, you can't just do something. It doesn't work that in college basketball. So
because they're not always great shooters, especially on contested shots.
yeah, and especially when no offense to Ty, but contested shots for her is shooting over a much taller player usually, and so
She does a great job.
she's really good. She's a really, really good basketball player. But I just think that, again, too stationary on offense, too much loading up the offense on one side of the floor, which is something that Damon and I noticed with this team. Just they don't have a lot going for them. I feel like neither of these teams have a lot going for them right now, and there needs to be drastic changes with both of these teams, and I don't know, like, I just don't think either coach really sees what we see.
A couple days off in Manhattan, Kansas for the women's team.
And Sunday's game
against Kansas State.
That's going to be hard. I think Kansas State, sleeper team on in basically the entire country. Lee might be the best player in the Big 12. Ioka Lee.
They're 18-1.
They're 18-1.
That seems good.
Yeah, they're really good, and I call them a sleeper, but they're like top. They're like top 10, 12 team in the country. And
number 11 at the moment.
I was watching a men's game actually, and somebody said that what they were like promoting a women's game that was coming up, and something that somebody said that was so true is that like this women's season is exciting because it's not where it's just like, okay, UConn, okay, South Carolina. There's
LSU.
some really, really good teams this year. I think that
LA schools.
I think that Kansas State is one of those teams.
I wish we got to see Juju Watkins this year.
Yeah.
That's sad that we don't get to see her come up.
RIP Pac-12.
Yeah, but Pac-12's coming back, but it's going to be different.
RIP OG Pac-12.
There you go. But yeah, I think that Kansas State could win the national championship. So that's going to be a rough one for ASU on Sunday.
A potentially rough one.
I think I'm going to say this right now. It's going to be a rough one for ASU.
All right, hockey. Did we enjoy the North Dakota game? Yeah, we did.
Yeah, it was
we had
great.
A good time.
The students are hilarious.
Yeah, they were yelling at Sempton-Felter the entire game, who, if you didn't know, the goalie from last season for ASU transferred to North Dakota, so the students were letting him have it throughout the whole game.
Especially because ASU was kind of laying it on him.
Cooking him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, ASU.
Thank you, may we have another.
ASU split that 2-game set with North Dakota, which was good. The second game went into overtime.
So they moved up in the rankings. North Dakota. They were ahead on North Dakota in the third period in the second matchup, but North Dakota came back and won that game eventually.
In the final minute,
and then
force it in overtime.
Yeah, and then eventually won in overtime.
Yeah, I was really impressed with Gibson Homer, the goaltender.
Oh my
for
goodness,
ASU.
what a game he had!
He's been really good, and they also have another goalie for ASU that has been really good. So both they have quite the goalie tandem. This team looks a lot better than they have in previous years. I think this might be Greg Powers' best team, and I'm excited to see what they can do moving forward. The Denver series coming up in early February, that's a big one, obviously, for the tournament. The tournament's really hard to make in college hockey, and ASU is
great crowd.
Looks like they're going to make it, but they need to keep rattling off wins.
Great crowd on Friday night, we'll say. At first, I thought there was going to be mostly North Dakota fans, but ASU fans showed up and showed out and were loud and excited about that game. Make sure to come out for that Denver series coming up soon.
It's amazing, given how this team started the season, that they are now tied at the top of the NCHC standings in their first season in the conference. Just given the parallels to what the football team and volleyball team did in their first seasons in the Big 12, I think it would be awesome if ASU hockey could do the same thing in the NCHC. Obviously, a long way to go still. We're not quite to the halfway point of conference play, but a big one starting tonight against St. Cloud against St. Cloud State in Minnesota. I mean, they're the other team that's right neck and neck with them in the USCHO tournament outlook, as like those are the first two teams out. So a big one, if they can get this win in Minnesota, like both wins, perhaps, like then you're really looking at the tournament potential appearance.
Yep. That's going to do it for this edition of State of the Sun Devils.
And that game, by the way, is on Fox 10, so watch it tonight if you can.
Yep. Thank you so much for listening and watching. You can find us on all forms of social media at AZ Sports Devils. We're going to... excuse me, sorry. I'll start over. You can find us on all forms of social media at AZ Sports Devils. You can find all Damon's work on the Arizona Sports app and on ArizonaSports.com. For Jesse Morrison and Damon Allred, I'm Jeremy Schnell. We'll talk to you soon.